Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Digital Amicus. My name is Abdul Haseeb Qazi. I am the co-founder of this online project. Today I will be moderating the discussion with two Chevening scholars. We are very grateful that they have given us their valuable time to discuss the Chevening application, the process, and how to actually pursue an LLM through the Chevening program. For this purpose, we would also like to know from our guests what the Chevening program is, or ये particularly law students और यंग लॉयर्स को किस तरह जो है ये एक अपॉर्चुनिटी है एक एलएलएम को अवेल करने के लिए थ्रू द ब्रिटिश गवर्नमेंट्स चीवनिंग स्कॉलरशिप प्रोग्राम. So for this purpose, we have two distinguished panelists with us. We have Ms. Komal Anwar, who is joining us from Karachi. She is an associate at Fazle Ghani Advocates, Karachi. She completed her LLB degree from the London School of Economics and Political Science in 2014 and was awarded the Chevening Scholarship by the UK government in 2017, with which she completed an LLM in corporate and commercial law from LSE. She also received distinctions in fundamentals of international commercial arbitration, theory of dispute resolution, and the law of corporate finance. She has authored a book on arbitration titled Fundamentals of International and Domestic Arbitration. She is a member of the Center for International Investment and Commercial Arbitration, International Arbitration Group of the London Court of International Arbitration, and Young International Arbitration Group of the Singapore International Arbitration Center. She is an advocate of the High Court of Sindh and practices litigation in the areas of taxation, arbitration, constitution, and commercial matters. We are also grateful to Ms. Waiza Rafique. Ms. Waiza is joining us from Lahore. She is a lawyer, she is a human rights advocate, and she received her British Chevening Scholarship for the year 2021. She holds an LLB honors degree, a post-graduation diploma in banking law, and another one in international affairs. She has done international law certificate course from the Research Society of International Law, Pakistan. She has been awarded the highly prestigious Chevening Scholarship and will pursue her master's in criminal law and criminal justice from the University of Sussex, England. So, Komal and Waiza, thank you so very much for being with us today. Digital Amicus is grateful for your time. So, we'd like to start the discussion by knowing your stories first. Through your stories, we'd like to know what are the prospects of doing an LLM through the Chevening Scholarship, what the Chevening Scholarship is, और ये सारा experience किस तरह का होता है in the UK being a student from Pakistan. So, Komal, we'll start with you because you have undertaken this entire process and now you are also practicing as an advocate. So, we'll start with you. Let's know your story as a Chevening scholar. And now that you've finished your LLM through the Chevening Scholarship, how is it helping you in your career? Over to you, Komal.
Thank you so much, Haseeb, for inviting me for the webinar. It's been an honor. And it also gave me time to introspect on how the experience of Chevening was and how it benefited me and is still benefiting me. So to begin with, back in 2016, I would say, I was working at a litigation law firm with Mr. Munir Malik, who's the former Attorney General of Pakistan and Senior Advocate of the Supreme Court of Pakistan. So I got involved in this case of arbitration, which was proceeding before the High Court of Sindh. And as you can tell from my introduction as well, that predominantly my interest and my experience has been in arbitration. So the idea to even apply for the Chevening Scholarship came from this very case that I was working on. And I felt that arbitration is an area of law which is so niche and requires such a specialized knowledge that I felt that if I get another opportunity to study it as a subject in masters, then that would really benefit me in future. So one of my friends was actually applying for Chevening, and I was in the middle of deciding which scholarship to go for, which not to opt for. Obviously, a lot of factors matter when you opt for studying, whether it's for your master's or bachelor's, the location, whether it will help you once you come back. Because Pakistan being a common law country, one of the factors which led me to apply for Chevening Scholarship as opposed to Fulbright Scholarship was because I wanted to go to UK. And US legal system is comparatively different from UK legal system. There are a lot of terms and laws which are very different because US has its own constitution. So this friend of mine was applying for Chevening Scholarship, and I asked her about it, and it was a brilliant package overall. So she, in fact, wanted me to help her out in applying for the Chevening Scholarship as well. And surprisingly, I got the Chevening Scholarship and she didn't. So, but that was just a joke, not to be discouraged about, having limited chances of getting the Chevening Scholarship. As I'll discuss shortly about, what are the factors which increase your chances of getting the Chevening Scholarship. So this is somewhere in 2016. I can't recall the exact month now that I started working on preparing my application for Chevening Scholarship, and I read about it and everything. And then the part two, we will probably discuss more about the application procedure. So right now, if I can just, shortly give a brief summary of my experience as a Chevening scholar and how it's benefiting me up till now. When I went to LSE, obviously it was a great experience overall, just being part of LSE, being in UK, and experiencing one of the best professors again, because LSE is the university where I graduated in 2014 after having done my LLB as well. So in 2017, when I joined LSE, I was obviously relatively more relaxed because I knew how the university operates, and the cultural shock which I had experienced in 2010, which is when I joined LSE for my undergrad LLB degree, all of those things were not there. So far, if I have to really be honest, one of my best experience, and if I have to say the highlight of my entire life would be my experience as a Chevening scholar. Just, this webinar led me to reminiscing all the memories that I've had in UK during my time as a Chevening scholar. Everything was so dreamy. It was almost unreal. Who would imagine a jackpot like that, getting your tuberculosis, fees recovered, your traveling expenses covered, your accommodation covered, the stipend, and, much to the surprise of my parents, I ended up saving 3 lakh rupees after I came back. So it was not just the money that sufficed for me to, cover up my expenses in UK, but it also actually led to me saving money. So when I returned back, which is in 2018, then because I had specialized in corporate and commercial law, even though I knew I'm fond of litigation, I decided to spend at least 1 year experiencing corporate and how it is different from litigation, and just to see for myself whether I find it better than litigation, so on and so forth. So at the time of the interviews, I realized that, all the rest of my qualifications, all the, the universities I had studied from, my achievements were somehow kept on the side. And the one thing of being a Chevening scholar became the highlight of my CV. And I became recognized as my identity of being a Chevening scholar. And people started taking me a lot more seriously than they took me, even after having graduated from a very prestigious university. Because what Chevening really does is, it is a purely merit-based scholarship, right? People can afford to pay to go to a university. Obviously, there is a standard criteria which needs to be met. But when you get a scholarship, there is an inherent mindset in Pakistan and even other countries that there is something more than simply merit or simply, being able to afford. It's your overall, ambition, your drive to be successful, something which is just more than simply being a good student and being able to afford to get that further qualification. So till now, people, whenever I'm networking with anybody, I get asked, "Oh, you're the one who's the Chevening scholar." And even when I have to pitch someone, a client, or even otherwise, just for participating in different forums, people, having kept aside everything else from my CV, the first question that I'm asked is, "Oh, how did you get this scholarship?" So that way, I think, and not just about people taking me seriously and the recognition that it has given me. The overall experience, I went to LSE after 3 years, and I enjoyed my course. I learned so much there. It was something which I would recommend, that it's a good thing that Chevening has kept a requirement of 2 years of work experience, because that gives you time to assess what do you really want to do in life, whether or not you're sure of pursuing whatever you want to pursue as masters. So after I came back, people say, oh, theoretical experience is not that important, it's the practical experience that counts. And I completely disagree. After I came back, I wrote a book on arbitration. And the reason why I was able to take such a big task was only because I had learned the knowledge, the theoretical part of it. I had acquired what international arbitration is overall, and that is something which I couldn't have handled on my own. I needed professors, I needed 1 year of just experiencing both theoretically and practically as well, because I used to participate in arbitration competitions, and I used to go to different chambers, and I did internships as well, and I used to basically, just shadow arbitrators and attend arbitration proceedings just to see how it is practically. So it sounds as if you're going to a university, you're only going to acquire theoretical experience, but that's not true. You can both acquire theoretical and practical experience as being a student at university. So that's my short story, which I have tried to summarize as fast as possible.
Well, thank you, Komal. A lot of insights in your story and your Chevening experience. So, coming to you, Waiza, please tell us about yourself and about your undergraduate experience, and then how did you actually decide that you're going to go for the Chevening Scholarship, and why did you particularly go for criminal law, as we mentioned in your introduction?
Thank you very much, Haseeb. First of all, for having me and giving me the opportunity to talk about this brilliant lifetime opportunity of Chevening and this scholarship. About myself, well, when I was an undergrad law student, right from my third or fourth semester, I kind of had it in my mind that I'm going to apply for a UK scholarship. Whether it would be Commonwealth Scholarship, Commonwealth Shared Scholarship particularly, or Chevening Scholarship, because a lot of our teachers who used to come and teach us were either Fulbright scholars or Commonwealth scholars, or they were Chevening scholars. So I kind of had the opportunity of meeting these scholars, and I used to draw inspiration from them, that after graduating they went to UK for 1 year and pursued their masters, and a lot of them were doing their PhDs as well. So I kind of had it in my mind right when I was an undergrad law student, but I wanted to give myself some time and some professional exposure before I actually delve into the application process. About the work experience that Chevening requires is not specifically the post-qualification work experience. So even if you're a fresh law graduate, you can right away apply for Chevening Scholarship if you meet the criteria of number of hours that are required to apply for the Chevening Scholarship. But still, I gave myself 2 years to actually probably learn more and have more of an hands-on experience before going through the application process. So right when I was a student, I felt like, I used to see Chevening scholars and, visit Facebook posts. And every year I used to see I am Chevening tags, people carrying and posting pictures. And, I used to dream कि एक दिन मैं भी शायद ऐसे I'll be taking a picture. So yeah, it was in 2019 that I finally I established my own law firm in 2019, and after a few months, I thought that now that I'm in a leadership position and I am owning a law firm and I'm running it on my own, I must have a master's degree. And somehow I just thought that it is perhaps the right time in my career to have a master's degree and apply for Chevening now. So I thought of applying, started visiting Chevening website. I didn't have much help initially, but when I got into the application process, I started finding people as well, connecting previous, my former professors and teachers and mentors and learning from them. And eventually I submitted my application, and then I was shortlisted, which I wasn't really expecting because this was my first time ever in any scholarship. I applied in Commonwealth Shared Scholarship as well. So this year, the same year. So this was my first time, and I wasn't really expecting because Chevening is a highly competitive scholarship. I still remember at the time of interview in Pakistan, we had 1:5 for selection candidates. Like for one seat, there were 5 people competing at the interview stage after shortlisting. So before shortlisting, तो आप सोच लीजिए कि competition का क्या level होगा. So बस कर दिया apply पहली दफा में, and then it became serious, and then there was no looking back. So अब I'm really looking forward to my journey in the UK, hopefully. So this was it about my practical experience. Yes, so by the time I graduated, I already had a 2 years work experience because I had started my internships quite earlier when I was a 5th semester law student. Uske baad, I joined Azam and Rai, that's a law firm, and through that law firm, I used to advise Punjab IT Board and some business startups and business incubation centers of Punjab IT Board. After that, I joined Government of Punjab as law officer. After working there for a good while, I joined the law firm of former Chief Justice Mia Saqib Nisar for a short while, and after that, I established my own law firm, which is still in function with the name of Waiza Rafique Advocates and Legal Consultants. So that's my brief professional journey so far. And I'm really looking forward to the Chevening experience and driving inspiration from Komal as well.
Well, thank you, Waiza, for providing us insights into your career and your achieving experience. Now, I'd like to particularly come to the application and the procedure of the achieving. Now, अब जाहिर है हमें ये पता है कि ये particular session जो हम कर रहे हैं ये law students और young lawyers के लिए है जो कि एक LLM के लिए aspire कर रहे हैं through the Chevening Scholarship. तो अगर एक जाहिर है अचीवनिंग जो है एक बहुत बड़ा प्रोग्राम है और उसमें बहुत सारे डिसिप्लिन्स के स्टूडेंट्स अपनी अपनी फील्ड में मास्टर्स करने के लिए जाते हैं. तो इस फैक्ट को कंसिडरिंग टेकिंग दिस इनटू अकाउंट कि एक लॉ ग्रेजुएट जिस तरह कोमल आपका एक्सपीरियंस था कि आपने ग्रेजुएशन के बाद एक्सपीरियंस गेन करके फिर यू अप्लाइड फॉर द अचीवनिंग, वेयर एज वाइजा आपने ग्रेजुएशन के थोड़े टाइम बाद ही कर दिया था बिकॉज योर वर्क एक्सपीरियंस जो था वो आपका साइमल्टेनियसली ग्रेजुएशन के साथ था थ्रू योर इंटर्नशिप्स. तो इफ़ यू टॉक अबाउट व्हाट द एप्लीकेशन स्पेसिफिकली रिक्वायर्स, तो उसके कौन कौन से प्री रेक्विजिट्स हैं जो कि एप्लीकेशन में आपको वो चीज़ें शो करनी पड़ती हैं और वो लॉ स्टूडेंट को कौन सी चीज़ें वो अकाउंट फॉर करनी चाहिए कि ये वो चीज़ें हैं. या फॉर एग्जांपल अगर एक फर्स्ट ईयर लॉ स्टूडेंट जो कि इस सेशन को सुन रहा है तो वो अपना प्लान किस तरीके से करे अगर आगे जाके उसको इस प्रोग्राम में अप्लाई करना है. सो विल स्टार्ट विद कोमल. सो इसमें कोमल अगर आप इसमें एप्लीकेशन इटसेल्फ और उसके प्री रेक्विजिट्स जो हैं बता सकें. I'd also like to mention कि Chevening Scholarship is open. I believe 3rd September से applications have been open and they're going to remain so up till November. So considering taking that fact into account, Komal, what would you like to tell us about the application particularly?
Okay, so in my case, Haseeb, I was lucky that I did not really have any conditions which were very tough to meet because one of the conditions was a 2-1 requirement. And for those of them who haven't studied in UK, they might not be able to understand what the qualification system is in UK because it's very different from Pakistan. The grading is such that either you get a first class honors, which is a first, or a second class honors, which is a it can be a high 2-1, it can be a low 2-1, or a 2-2 degree and further below. So for me, I had a 2-1 degree. A lot of times I was told while I was applying for the application by people who did not have a 2-1 degree that we applied for Chevening and we did not have a 2-1 requirement fulfilled, but we still heard from other people who applied that they managed to get the scholarship. These are only hearsay. I have not come across any person whom I have spoken to who had a 2-2 degree and managed to get this scholarship. So I would strongly advise whoever is listening to this webinar that do not hear to whatever anybody else has to say who has not herself or himself experienced this scholarship, because a lot of times people feel so motivated in the beginning that oh, there were cases of people who did not meet the conditions or the eligibility criteria, so we can even apply. It's simply wasting your time. Rather than looking for opportunities which have a certain criteria to be met, you should perhaps use your current skills or whatever your qualifications are for something other than perhaps achieving a scholarship. So for me, the one requirement, like I said, and I recently came across these statistics either on Facebook, because Chevening is also very good in terms of marketing itself on various social media platforms, be it Instagram, be it Facebook, and LinkedIn, so on and so forth. So I was reading one of the posts which said that the majority reasons for people not getting the Chevening scholarship are that they haven't met the 2-year work experience. They apply for the scholarship without having met the 2-1 requirement. So I would strongly recommend that please do give importance to the requirement of meeting the 2-1 qualification. And for those of them who are uncertain of what this 2-1 requirement is and how would that be equivalent to their Pakistani qualification system, be it matriculation, and then so if somebody, let's say, has not done O levels or A levels and has done inter, so one of the requirements is also that you need to give an IELTS exam to meet your requirement for having for not basically taking that additional course which you otherwise have to take, which is a beginner's course for meeting that English language skills requirement. So for me, I was exempted because I have done O levels, I've done A levels, I've had a UK degree. So that requirement was, I had an exemption for it. But those of them who basically have not had a UK degree, have not done their O levels and A levels. And at any stage, I would say that even though myself and Waiza, we try to cover up as many points as possible. But overall, I had such a good experience in terms of asking for help in terms of the application procedure or any other queries that I had in the start of the application procedure or even in the middle. So one should not hesitate in terms of asking the actual officials who are in charge of dealing with the applications, as opposed to listening to people who haven't even secured the Chevening scholarship. And then, of course, after you've met the 2-1 requirement and you don't have to give any exam to meet the English language requirement, and the 2 years work experience, which is absolutely crucial. And the other requirement was of the recommendations. You need to have 2 recommendations. For me, one of them was from my LSC professor during my undergrad, and the other one was by my former boss, Mr. Miri Malik, who very generously wrote a fantastic recommendation for me. And just one more point on the recommendations. Even though it's very subjective in terms of obviously whoever you're going to ask for recommendation, you're the best judge of that person, whether or not he or she will be able to cover all the points or write a good enough recommendation. But I personally feel it's a good idea to have a diverse set of recommendations. So for instance, rather than having 2 recommendations from, let's say, your professors, or 2 recommendations from your workplace. And the reason why I went for one recommendation from my LSC professor and the other one from my boss was also because I wanted to give that sort of a diversity of recommendations, so that people, whoever is going to check your application, is convinced that you are good in your job and you're good as a student as well. So the good thing about Chevening scholarship, and I'm amazed still, that there isn't really a very high threshold to meet, at least at the time of shortlisting. So at the time of shortlisting, all they're really judging are these basic core requirements that I just mentioned about. And it is after the shortlisting, which is at the interview stage, where comes the real competition, which Waiza just mentioned that she was competing against 5 other shortlisted people. And of course, I'll talk a bit more in detail about the interview procedure and how the interview questions are supposed to be answered and all of that. But before that, I would like to stress about being very cautious in terms of what you write in your application. The reason being that when you will be interviewed, your application will be in front of the panelists, whoever will be interviewing you, and they will know what's written in the application inside out. So there is no way you can make up a story, concoct facts, and then convince them that you deserve a Chevening scholarship. So this is very important. Sometimes it might be an innocent error of memory. Maybe you do not really remember what you wrote in the application at the time. So whatever goes in the application should be something which should be thoroughly revised. And please do not ask anybody else to write the application for you. You're the best person to decide for yourself what should go in the application. Be as honest as possible. Be as unique as possible. And the idea of Chevening scholarship overall is to convince them that you will do something for the country after you come back. So your application should not reflect that how eager you are to stay in UK, to experience the glitz and glamour of UK and all of that, which of course goes in the package. But the idea is that each and every sentence of your application should focus on how you will benefit Pakistan out of it. And there's a subtle point in terms of prioritizing the Chevening awards, which are, so this is also something which I do not have conclusive facts about, but that's my general observation. During my batch of Chevening scholars, the majority of the people who actually got the scholarship were civil servants. And people had their own opinions as to why there are so many civil servants as opposed to private employees. And it's something which is very basic, and I don't think so I'll shy away from mentioning it. They're investing a very, very hefty amount. And the money which goes into the Chevening scholarship is actually the money of the UK. They have investment they're doing is for the right person, and that person is willing to come back and return to Pakistan. Unfortunately, Pakistan is not, there have been cases where their scholarship. So one of the requirements, but I would say condition of getting the Chevening scholarship is that you can then not apply for another scholarship immediately or stay in UK, and you have to give at least 2 years gap in between before you can then go back to UK or apply for another scholarship. So for those of them who intend to stay in UK, for instance, and their primary go for the LLM degree, okay, please do not apply for the scholarship because you will basically be kicked out. And even if you're not kicked out, I think it's very shameful to basically do something which is clearly mentioned that it is not legal, and then to spoil the image of the entire country overall. I got to know about cases where people had misused their scholarships so badly, where it was, so one of the conditions of your Chevening scholarship is that you cannot basically leave UK for more than a 1 month period of time, which would be the paid vacations for which you will be basically, you continue to get these stipend. But beyond that, basically, if you take more than 1 month off, then you will basically not be paid for that time period. And there were instances where people did leave UK without informing the officials, and then obviously some of them had repercussions, some of them didn't have repercussions, but overall I would say that it is absolutely tragic to see you getting such a prestigious scholarship and then spoiling it. So, Haseeb, if you would like me to talk more about the interview stage, then I can speak. Or if Waiza would like to share more about, prior to the interview stage, then perhaps Waiza can take.
Yes, I think we'll put the interview on hold, and first would like to come to Vaisa and know from her how she addressed the application and how, in her view, the application should be addressed and how the requirements and the prerequisites should be addressed. Then we'll come to the interview and so forth. So, Vaisa, over to you now.
Thank you very much, Asif. A lot of it has already been said by Komal, and very rightly, she's already pointed out about the criteria, about meeting all the eligibility requirements and everything. One thing that I would specifically want to mention in the eligibility criteria is that it might change as well from year to year. Like for 2020, for my round of applications, because of COVID, the requirement of IELTS exam was completely taken off. So again, it is important for everybody who's applying to keep themselves updated with the latest information about the Chevening Scholarship. And now that I am receiving so many messages and requests about guideline for the Chevening Scholarship, I would say that it is very important to first go and do your own thorough research from Chevening official website and watch all the available YouTube videos or research material or whatever is available on Google about Chevening, so that you get to have a first-hand knowledge of the scholarship and the entire philosophy of Chevening. I would say that what is the exact cutout that Chevening is looking for. There is no typical Chevener, as the Chevening website itself says, but still there are certain traits that they're looking for. So everyone who's applying for the scholarship has to know what exactly is required by Chevening, and I think that the person who wants to apply can know it best through their own research, instead of asking people around and then relying on the information, as Komal herself also said. About yes, about the eligibility criteria, be very aware of the latest changes on the Chevening website and see about the work experience. I would want to say that it's not that if you are in your undergraduate degree and once you graduate, after that you need 2 years of work experience to apply for Chevening. You have to wait for 2 years. When you go to the website and you actually research, the 2 years work experience means a certain number of working hours, which is I think around 2600, or I don't know, but that's available on the website. So if you want to be eligible for Chevening Scholarship, you have to have a work experience of 2600 working hours, and that too not paid work experience. It could be your volunteership position, it could be work with any society or any welfare foundation, it could be anything that you've been working on, any community service, not your professional paid experience. So ये एक बहुत बड़ी myth है जिसको I believe के तोड़ने की ज़रूरत है कि 2 years work experience does not mean that you do your undergraduate degree and then you work and get paid for it for 2 long years, and then only then you're eligible to apply for Chevening Scholarship. एक तो ये चीज़ हो गई. About the application, so I would talk about the actual content of the application, जो कि बहुत ज़्यादा ज़रूरी है मुझे लगता है. उसमें part of it is based on basic details and biodata and personal information of the applicant, जिसमें आपकी अपनी date of birth, name, email address और इस तरह की चीज़ें आ जाती हैं. Then your professional work experience, your degrees, your qualification, CGPAs क्या थे, ये सारी चीज़ें आ जाती हैं. But the actual part of the application जो जिसकी basis पे evaluation होता है, that is based on 4 essays. Now, what are those 4 essays? All of these essays have to be on 500 words each. One essay is networking essay, in which the candidate has to establish himself as as a strong person who has strong networking skills, because chevening की एक बहुत बड़ी requirement ये है that they're looking for leaders who have strong networking skills and who can foster on their networking skills to bring benefit to their home country, as well as in fostering the goals of the UK government in their home country, like UK in Pakistan क्या करना चाह रहा है उसको foster करने के लिए. So one essay is networking essay, second essay is leadership essay. Leadership essay में the candidate has to establish himself as a strong leader, कि उसकी leadership skills क्या हैं और how the candidate has uh, um, fostered his leadership skills and relied on his or her leadership skills to actually get benefit and to make any social impact in his or her community. ये एक important चीज़ है. The third essay is on why do you want to study in UK. This is the part where you have to establish reasons of why do you specifically want to go to UK and why do you specifically want to choose all these 3 universities. You have to give 3 universities and 3 courses for Chevening Scholarship, and you have to put in your application all the 3 courses जो आपने choose किए हैं. So in this third essay you have to establish कि ये 3 यूनिवर्सिटीज क्यों ज़रूरी हैं आपके लिए और ये 3 कोर्सेज ही क्यों ज़रूरी हैं और ये 3 कोर्सेज यूके में ही जाके क्यों करना ज़रूरी है आपके लिए. For me being a lawyer, as Komal has pointed out, common law country है क्योंकि पाकिस्तान भी, तो for me it was a very important reason that I didn't want to go to Australia or US, और मेरे लिए हमेशा से UK ही था because I had my own reasons. इसी तरह से everybody should have at least एक वो जो सेल्फ एनालिसिस का प्रोसेस होता है उससे गुजरना बहुत ज़रूरी होता है. दैट व्हाई डू यू एक्चुअली वांट टू गो टू यूके, नॉट ऑल दीज कल्चरल एस्पेक्ट्स और वो सारा कुछ वो तो है, इट कम्स अलोंग विद द पैकेज, बट why do you want to do a certain degree, a certain course from a certain university and from UK specifically. ये ऐसे एक होता है जिसमें within 500 words you have to establish your point. The fourth essay is your career goals, in which Chevening is very much interested in knowing your short-term, your medium-term, and your long-term goals that you want to pursue after you're done with your master's degree and when you return to your home country. One important advice that I would want to give to all the applicants over here is that make sure that whatever you choose or plan for your career, it has to be in harmony with what UK government is doing in your home country, because it's only then when they would want to invest in you. As Komal has said that एक ये hefty amount है जो वो invest करते हैं. Why would they pay for your education if they do not have any they do not have any interest in it. So interest क्या है कि you have to actually go to the to internet and do research about what UK government is doing in your home country, what are their goals, what are the sustainable development goals that are in line with the UK government that wants to implement in your home country, what are the core issues in your particular field and your particular area of study in your home country that you want to address, and are they even relevant to what UK government also wants to address in your home country or not. This is something कि जो आपको अपने करियर गोल्स का ऐसे करते हुए इसको यू हैव टू कीप इन माइंड. एंड दिस ऐसे अगेन इज इन 500 वर्ड्स. पहले आप शॉर्ट टर्म गोल्स बताते हैं, फिर आप मीडियम टर्म और लॉन्ग टर्म गोल्स जो भी आपके हैं वो आपने एस्टैब्लिश करने होते हैं. एक और चीज विच इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट इज व्हाइल राइटिंग योर एसेज, I was advised in the sense that when I did my research and when I was applying, I came across STAR approach to do essays, which is very important. STAR approach में you आप इंटरनेट पे जाके देखिए, STAR approach पे there's hell lot of material available. इसीलिए मैंने कहा कि do your own research, get on to internet और सारा कुछ खुद first hand knowledge लेके आप अपने तौर पे research कीजिए और देखिए, and you will get to know कि it's competitive, लेकिन अगर आप इसको समझ जाते हैं तो it's not as difficult as well, I must say. इसीलिए किसी को भी शुरू में डिस्करेज होकर या ये नहीं सोचना चाहिए कि हम अप्लाई कर ही नहीं सकते. I would highly encourage everybody to go, read, research and then see. Everyone can apply और आगे फिर जो भी उसका application process है वो चलता है. तो फिर जाहिर है सब लोग एक राउंड में तो नहीं हो सकते, but I would really encourage everybody to apply for Chevening Scholarship now that the round is open. सो एप्लीकेशन में ये 4 एसेज हैं जो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. स्टार अप्रोच इज़ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, जिसमें आपको स्टार अप्रोच क्या है. स्टार अप्रोच इज सिचुएशन के आपने अपनी नेटवर्किंग की भी जो एग्जांपल्स बतानी है या लीडरशिप की भी जो एग्जांपल बतानी है अपने एसे में, उसमें यू हैव टू मेंशन कि जी लीडरशिप आप में है तो वो आपने कैसे प्रूव की या कैसे इस्टेब्लिश की. एक पर्टिकुलर सिचुएशन थी स्टार में, उस सिचुएशन में आपको ये पर्टिकुलर टास्क मिला, उस पर्टिकुलर टास्क पर आपने इस तरह से ये एक्शन लिया और ये एक्शन लेने के बाद इसका ये XYZ रिजल्ट निकला और इस XYZ रिजल्ट से कम्युनिटी में ये ABC इम्पैक्ट हुआ. ये है स्टार अप्रोच. अब इसमें आपने पूरा स्टार्ट टू एंड बता दिया कि इस पूरे सिनारियो के बाद मैंने अपनी लीडरशिप जो है उसको इस तरह से एस्टैब्लिश किया कि कम्युनिटी में ये इम्पैक्ट आया. इसी तरह से व्हेन यू टॉक अबाउट नेटवर्किंग, तो नेटवर्किंग में भी आपने स्टार अप्रोच से अपनी एग्जांपल्स बतानी है कि ये सिचुएशन थी, यहाँ पे मुझे ये काम करना था जो कि नहीं हो सकता था अगर मेरी अच्छी नेटवर्किंग स्किल्स ना होती, अगर मेरा कॉन्टैक्ट सर्कल अच्छा ना होता. मेरा क्योंकि नेटवर्किंग स्किल्स बहुत स्ट्रांग है, मेरा सर्कल बहुत अच्छा है, लिहाजा मैंने अपने XYZ कॉन्टैक्ट्स पे लेवरेज करते हुए अपना ये वाला टास्क अचीव किया और उसका ये इम्पैक्ट कम्युनिटी में हुआ. दिस इज स्टार अप्रोच, जिसके जरिए आपने इस्टेब्लिश कर दिया कि आपकी नेटवर्किंग स्किल्स स्ट्रांग हैं. इसी तरह से व्हेन यू टॉक अबाउट योर करियर गोल्स, तो हैव अ वेरी क्लियर पिक्चर ऑफ व्हाट यू वांट टू डू, हैव अ वेरी क्लियर पिक्चर ऑफ व्हाट यूके गवर्नमेंट वांट्स टू डू इन योर होम कंट्री, हैव अ वेरी क्लियर पिक्चर ऑफ whatever you want to do in your home country is whether it is connected to any of the sustainable development goals or not. ये वो सारी चीजें हैं जो एटलीस्ट इन माय एप्लीकेशन मैंने देखी थी और मैंने उन पे उनको एटलीस्ट व्हेन आई वाज अप्लाइंग तो आई केप्ट देम इन माइंड. सो ये 4 एसेज हैं विच इज द एक्चुअल कोर ऑफ द एप्लीकेशन. इन 4 एसेज को अगर आपने कर लिया तो ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ दीज एसेज योर एप्लीकेशन विल बी शॉर्ट लिस्टेड. देन कम्स द इंटरव्यू स्टेज. इंटरव्यू स्टेज में यू हैव टू गिव अ फेस टू योर एप्लीकेशन. आपको ये प्रूव करना है कि जो आपकी एप्लीकेशन है, जो आपने लिखा है, वट एवर योर एसेज वो आपने ही लिखे थे, आप ही उसके पीछे थे. यू वर द पर्सन बिहाइंड ऑल ऑफ दिस एंड यू नो यू हैव टू जस्टिफाई एंड आर्ग्यू योर केस, जो पहले आपने इन राइटिंग किया है, नाउ इन पर्सन. सो हमारी दफ़ा तो खैर इंटरव्यूज भी वर वर्चुअल बिकॉज ऑफ कोविड. आई हैड माई ऑनलाइन इंटरव्यू. इट वॉज वेरी ब्रीफ फॉर 20 minutes only, but the standard is that the interview is taken for around 40 to 45 minutes. लकी पीपल जिन्होंने प्री कोविड टाइम्स में कर लिए, दे हैड वेरी गुड इंटरव्यूज, बट वी वर लाइक इंटरनेट नहीं आ रहा और लाइट नहीं आ रही और इस किस्म के मसलों में हम लोग फंसे हुए थे. खैर एनी हाउ इट वॉज फन. 1 साल का अब अचीविंग पीपल से दैट is a 1-year scholarship and it's 1-year journey, but I believe के 1 year तो ये बिल्कुल भी नहीं है. It's a lifetime opportunity, which it actually is, but अगर आप उसको core बहुत strict sense में भी देखें तो it is at least 2 years journey, 1 year for your application and 1 year for the actual experience. So my Chevening journey has been fun so far, especially because this year's cohort is going to be a unique one. 1983 से Chevening Scholarship जो है वो चल रहा है और कभी भी virtual interviews नहीं हुए, but this time thanks to COVID. लेकिन this was it about my application.
Waiza, I'd also like you to mention the timeline of the application. एप्लीकेशन अब खुल गई, उसके बाद अप्रॉक्सीमेटली कितने टाइम बाद जो है वो इंटरव्यू होता है और फिर फाइनली जो इसका रिजल्ट अनाउंस होता है, एंड व्हेन डू द क्लासेस अल्टीमेटली स्टार्ट. तो इफ यू कुड डिस्कस दैट एज वेल, क्योंकि रिसेंटली आप इस प्रोसेस से गुजरी हैं, तो इफ यू कुड शेड सम लाइट ऑन दैट, वाइजा.
Sure. It's a whole 1-year process. Application अगस्त में usually start हो जाती हैं, लेकिन this year they started in September. जब सितंबर में शुरू होती हैं तो नवंबर, इस दफ़ा it is said कि नवंबर में close हो जाएंगी, लेकिन last year when I submitted my application, I remember it was 31st October. It was my brother's birthday, तो मैंने कहा शायद वो मेरे लिए लकी होगा. So I submitted on 31st October and yeah, application window थोड़ी लंबी होती है, लेकिन इस दफ़ा काफ़ी brief है, again because of COVID. खुलने में भी 1-2 दिन जो है वो delay हो गया. उसके बाद interviews were originally my interview was scheduled in April, जो मेरा actual in-person interview था. According to the standard timeline, my interview was scheduled in April. लेकिन क्योंकि कोविड की वजह से फिर डिले हुआ, so my interview actually happened in May. बट आप ये देख लीजिए कि अगर नवंबर फर्स्ट वीक में एप्लीकेशन स्टैंडर्ड ये है कि क्लोज होती हैं, और उसके बाद फिर मार्च अप्रैल में इंटरव्यूज जो हैं वो शुरू हो जाते हैं. शॉर्ट लिस्टिंग ईमेल्स जो हैं वो फरवरी में आना शुरू हो जाती हैं, और उसके बाद फिर जिन लोगों के इंटरव्यूज होते हैं दे गेट टू नो के उनकी क्या क्या स्लॉट्स हैं, वो आपने खुद ही बुक करनी होती हैं ऑनलाइन जाके, आपको जो भी टाइम कन्वीनियंट लगता है उस पर. वंस यू आर डन विद द इंटरव्यू, तो रिजल्ट्स जो हैं उनका जो टाइम होता है दैट्स जून. जून में रिजल्ट्स आना शुरू होते हैं, और रिजल्ट्स आने के बाद देयर इज अ सर्टेन टाइम दैट इज गिवन. अच्छा, पहले जब इंटरव्यू में सिलेक्शन होने के बाद आपके रिजल्ट्स आते हैं तो वो उसमें आप कंडीशनली सिलेक्टेड होते हैं, यू आर नॉट अनकंडीशनली सिलेक्टेड. देयर आर सर्टेन कंडीशंस दैट यू हैव टू मीट इवन आफ्टर बीइंग सिलेक्टेड इन द इंटरव्यू. वो क्या कंडीशंस होती हैं? वो ये कंडीशंस होती हैं दैट यू हैव टू सिक्योर अनकंडीशनल ऑफर्स फ्रॉम एनी ऑफ द 3 यूनिवर्सिटीज दैट यू हैव मेंशन्ड इन योर एप्लीकेशन. उन 3 यूनिवर्सिटीज में अगर आपने किसी भी उन 3 यूनिवर्सिटीज में से आप नहीं अपनी अनकंडीशनल ऑफर सिक्योर कर सके, तो आपको अपनी इंटरव्यू स्टेज पर ही बता देना होता है. इंटरव्यू स्टेज इज द टाइम व्हेन एक दफा फिर यू आर आस्क्ड कि जो आपने अपनी रिटन एप्लीकेशन में 3 यूनिवर्सिटीज और कोर्सेज मेंशन किए थे, क्या वही उन्हीं के साथ आप स्टिक करना चाहेंगे या यू वांट टू चेंज. तो दैट इज द टाइम व्हेन इफ यू वांट टू मेक अ चेंज टू एनी ऑफ योर यूनिवर्सिटीज और कोर्सेज यू कैन, बट आफ्टर दैट यू कैन नॉट. अब इंटरव्यू पे आपकी यूनिवर्सिटीज और कोर्सेज तो लॉक हो गए. अब इंटरव्यू के बाद जब आप सिलेक्ट हो जाते हैं तो फिर आपको अपने अनकंडीशनल ऑफर्स देनी होती हैं. उसके लिए आपके प्रोग्राम ऑफिसर्स आपके साथ इन टच हो जाते हैं, एंड देन यू हैव टू टेक द प्रोसीजर फॉरवर्ड. और जब आप अपनी अनकंडीशनल ऑफर्स दे देते हैं, कुछ लोगों के लिए आईएलटीएस की कंडीशन भी होती है, वहाँ पर मीट करनी होती है. इन माई केस इट वाजंट बिकॉज आई सबमिटेड माई ओ लेवल्स रिजल्ट्स, तो वो उन्होंने उसी बेस पे वेव कर दिया था. लेकिन इस दफा तो कोविड की वजह से जनरली ही आइल्स वेव हो गया था. सो देयर वाज अ ड्यूलिंगो टेस्ट जो कि इस दफा काफी लोगों ने दिया है टू मीट देयर अनकंडीशनल, टू मेक देयर ऑफर्स अनकंडीशनल. तो ये अगेन जैसे मैंने कहा कि आपको लेटेस्ट जो भी चेंजेस आ रहे हैं, जो भी एलिजिबिलिटी में चेंजेस आ रहे हैं और जो भी पॉलिसीज हैं, उनके लिए आपको खुद अपडेटेड रहना पड़ता है. फॉर एग्जांपल इस साल अगर मैंने अप्लाई किया है एंड आई टेल इट कि जी आइल्स नहीं था, तो अगले साल आइल्स अगर होगा तो फिर आपको ये चीज खुद ही देखनी होगी. तो दिस वाज इट. इंटरव्यू के रिजल्ट्स आ गए, फिर अनकंडीशनल ऑफर्स के लिए उन्होंने एक डेडलाइन दे दी. उस डेडलाइन पे आपने अपनी अपनी ऑफर्स को अनकंडीशनल अगर कर लिया तो देन यू आर फाइनली सिलेक्टेड. अनकंडीशनली सिलेक्टेड, फिर आपको आपका फाइनल अवार्ड लेटर मिल जाता है जो विच सेज कि अब नाउ यू आर अ चीवनिंग स्कॉलर. उसके बाद जनरली तो ये होता है कि आपकी एक प्री डिपार्चर सेरेमनी होती है बहुत अच्छी सी, लेकिन इस दफ़ा वो ऑनलाइन हुई है. तो एंड देन यू नो फिर वीज़ा प्रोसेस एंड ऑल, कुछ मेडिकल टेस्ट होते हैं आपके, ट्यूबरक्लोसिस टेस्ट. एंड बाय द वे यू द ट्यूबरक्लोसिस टेस्ट दैट यू टेक, उसके लिए भी चीवनिंग जो है वो आपको रीएम्बर्स करता है लेटर ऑन. सो इट्स एब्सोल्युटली फुली फंडेड. अगर मैं कहूँ कि ये इट्स वेरी जेनरस ग्रांट, और इसी वजह से शायद इट्स यू नो रिकग्नाइज्ड अक्रॉस द वर्ल्ड एज वेल. बहुत अच्छा स्कॉलरशिप है, और इसी वजह से शायद इट्स हाईली कम्पिटिटिव एज वेल. सो ये कुछ उसकी जो है वो टाइमलाइन होती है. लाइक इफ यू स्टार्ट इन अगस्त 2019, तो जुलाई अगस्त 2020 तक एक पूरे साल में आपका जो है वो एप्लीकेशन प्रोसेस चलता है. फ्रॉम योर पहले तो लॉन्ग लिस्टिंग भी होती थी एक टाइम में, फिर शॉर्ट लिस्टिंग होती थी और फिर इंटरव्यूज होते थे. लेकिन अब जो है वो सिर्फ शॉर्ट लिस्टिंग होती है और फिर इंटरव्यूज एंड देन यू नो फाइनल रिजल्ट्स एंड देन फाइनल प्रोसेस. और सिलेक्शन भी जो होती है वो 2 कैटेगरीज में होती है. एक दैट योर कंडीशनली सिलेक्टेड कैंडिडेट, सेकेंडली योर अ रिजर्व कैंडिडेट. अब कंडीशनली सिलेक्टेड कैंडिडेट्स जो होते हैं, व्हेन एनी ऑफ देम इज नॉट एबल टू मीट द कंडीशंस ऑफ द यूनिवर्सिटी, या कोई और उनकी कंडीशंस हैं जो वो नहीं मीट कर पाते, तो फिर उसमें वो ड्रॉप हो जाते हैं. एंड देन वन ऑफ द रिजर्व कैंडिडेट्स गेट अ चांस टू बी अपग्रेडेड एंड एक्चुअली बी अवॉर्डेड द स्कॉलरशिप. सो इस तरह से सारा जो है ये टाइमलाइन का प्रोसेस चलता है.
Well, thank you for all the insights. Now, coming to you, Komal, arbitration is an emerging field in Pakistan. So, what I'm particularly trying to come towards is that स्पेशलाइज जिन सब्जेक्ट्स में करना होता है, तो उनको एक अंडर ग्रेड जब होता है तो ऑब्वियसली उनको ऑल मुख्तलिफ तरह के काम जो हैं वो अंडरटेक करने पड़ते हैं। वो क्रिमिनल लॉ भी हो सकता है, इट ऑल डिपेंड्स ऑन द एम्प्लॉयर, आप कहाँ किस लॉ फर्म में या किस ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के साथ एफिलिएटेड हैं। सो एक तो ये चीज़ कि आपने इसको किस तरीके से नेविगेट करना होता है थ्रू दी एसेज दैट वाइजा मेंशन, और ऑल्सो ड्यूरिंग द इंटरव्यूज़ के आपको जस्टिफाई किस तरह करना पड़ता है कि ये पर्टिकुलर फील्ड है और मुझे इसमें जाना है, एंड व्हाट्स द एंटायर इंटरव्यू प्रोसेस लाइक?
Okay, so Haseeb, interestingly, at the time when I applied, I was very much interested in human rights as well, along with arbitration. In fact, I would say that as much as I was interested in arbitration, I was equally interested in human rights. So, for my application purposes, I had to share my experience of having worked in human rights cases. So, there's a lawyer in Karachi, very senior advocate, Mr. Faisal Siddiqui. He has his own human rights organization running, and he has done a number of human rights cases. The list goes on. And in 2014, I had worked with him, even though himself and Mr. Munir Malik, whom I was working in 2016, were at the time part of the same firm. Now the firm has split up in terms of different partners. So I mentioned about my experience of working with him in a couple of human rights cases. One of them was to do with the Baldia factory fire case. I'm not sure if you have heard of it, but there was this Baldia factory fire incident in Karachi, and he was the human rights lawyer for it. And I assisted him in my capacity as the associate working for him, and I did research. I was part of the applications and the court proceedings and all of that took place. Simultaneously, I also mentioned about my experience in arbitration. So there was this case in High Court of Sindh, which was before Justice Rafi Siddiqui, and it was an application under Section 30. I wouldn't go into the nitty-gritties of the law itself involved, but the point that I'm trying to make is that you really have to reflect your experience of whatever interests you mention in your application, and then tie it up with why you want to pursue that particular course in your university. So the link I drew basically in my application was firstly mentioning my interest as to why I'm interested in human rights, how will it serve the basic requirement of achieving a scholarship, of basically tying relationships between, strengthening the relationships between UK and Pakistan. So I managed to somehow reflect that in my application, that my work experience of arbitration and human rights, coupled together with my strong interest in how that could benefit Pakistan and how it would also strengthen the relationship between the two countries, that I was able to convince at the interview stage to the panelists that I am the candidate who deserves not only to be getting the Chevening Scholarship, but also that any costs that will be spent on me will be worthwhile, and that the courses themselves reflect that. So if suppose I had mentioned in my application that I am interested in taxation, and I had chosen a course in human rights law or arbitration, then that's bizarre, because you mention about your interest in taxation, but your courses reflect something which is completely different. So another thing that I would like to mention, and this is something which I'm a little cautious in terms of mentioning it, because this should not be the policy, standard policy, but just to put everyone at ease, the applicants, that it's not a very strict criteria that whatever courses that you mention in your application, and even the ones that you get your conditional offer from, unconditional offer from, are an absolute, written in stone, that you have to basically only then apply for those, continue to basically study those courses in the university which you gain your conditional offer, unconditional offer from. So in my case, what had happened was that I applied for human rights law and arbitration and everything. And I basically, out of the 3 universities that you have to apply to, So you can either choose, so one thing which I want to make clear is that you have three options. You can either apply to two different courses in the same university, or you can basically apply to all three different universities. Now I can't remember off the top of my head whether there were three options or four options, but I vaguely recall, because it's been a while, that I applied to UCL and I applied to, okay, sorry, let me please correct myself, because what had happened was that I am confusing my undergrad experience as well, because in my undergrad experience, I had applied for two different courses in LSC, law and anthropology and law. So please, I stand corrected. I had applied for three different universities, UCL, King's, and LSC. Once I got the offer from LSC, I did not really bother to secure myself in King's or UCL, because that was my first priority. So I had to let go of the requirements which were supposed to be met for UCL and King's. So once I got the Chevening Scholarship, my mentor, Mr. Munir Malik, he told me that, Komal, why are you, so my exact course that I had applied for was basically MSc in Human Rights. So I actually changed the course completely. It was from MSc in Human Rights to LLM in Corporate and Commercial Law. So he told me at the time, and he gave a very, very genuine and a very sincere opinion, and I have the utmost regard for him. He said that, Komal, if you want to pursue human rights, you can continue to pursue it, but do not leave the corporate or the commercial aspect. You know, that's what gets the bucks, right? So that was a very practical advice that he gave me. Of course, I don't want to imply even for a second that people who practice human rights shouldn't practice it entirely and they should do something other than human rights simultaneously. In Pakistan, the problem is that there are very few organizations which pay well. And of course, let's not forget the importance that after you've spent so much money, money is something which, you know, is self-recognition as well. It's self-rewarding that, okay, fine, you know, you work so hard and then the money that comes with it, you feel good about it. So that's something that's an important component that cannot be kept outside the equation completely. So after I secured my unconditional offer from LSC, which was MSc in Human Rights, I changed my course completely and I instead chose LLM, Masters of Laws. So I did not at the time choose a specialization, because the way it works in LSC is that once you're enrolled in that particular course, LLM, and then you get to choose whichever, if at all you do want to specialize. Otherwise, you also have the option of just having a general LLM degree. And I know a lot of my talk is geared towards law, and there will be applicants who will be tired of me listening, talking about law continuously, but that's what my experience has been. So I don't have much to share about other courses. But in law, if there is anybody listening who's an aspiring applicant of Chevening Scholarship, I would suggest that if you're not sure of which field you want to specialize in, I was also at the time not really sure, because as I had mentioned earlier, I wanted to test waters in corporate and commercial law, which unfortunately were terrible in the sense that I did not really like it at all. But any amount of experience is never wasted. At least now I know that I don't like corporate and I really, really like litigation. And the importance of litigation, or let's say the charm of litigation, became even more when I saw how dry corporate and commercial law was for me. But every person is different. You know, it's my individual experience. I thoroughly hated corporate, but there may be someone. And the reason why I actually specialized in corporate and commercial law was also because I wanted to see how it is theoretically, whether I enjoy company law, which I also hated actually. So I only liked I only liked my arbitration courses, which is why I got the distinction, because I absolutely loved it. I am a hardcore fan of the arbitration. Even now, there's another scholarship which I applied for, but since this is not the topic of the webinar, and I secured it only because of arbitration experience, and the idea of that particular scholarship was also to show how it would strengthen the relationships of UK and Pakistan. So having said that, it shouldn't be the approach that you write some other course and then in the end, you end up changing some other course. Yes, they are very accommodating, but this should not be. And I did not do it in terms of having some sort of fraudulent intent attached to it, that I'll uh, brag about human rights in the interview and I'll convince them, oh my god, I genuinely at the time wanted to study human rights in LSE, but it was purely from a very practical perspective that I decided to opt out of it. Having said that, well, I wouldn't say all, but the majority of the things that I wrote in my application and whatever it was in my capacity, I was able to fulfill whatever I wrote. I have done it so far. Even the webinar itself, one of the questions I would say, or I vaguely remember, is that how will you be able to market Chevening Scholarship? How will you be able to promote it? What will you be doing in terms of networking with LNR or spreading the name of Chevening Scholarship? And this is one of the ways that I'm doing it right now in the form of this webinar, that I'm basically helping people apply for this Chevening Scholarship. In the end, this is something which is a very general advice and not something which is geared to Chevening Scholarship only. In life, whatever you pursue, be it a scholarship, be it your job, be it your hobby, whatever, you should do it with the utmost sincerity, because only then it is, it comes across as genuine. Otherwise, it's very easy, especially for people who take interviews year after year. They see so many applicants on, every year, that it's very easy for them to gauge which applicant is genuine and which one is simply trying to fake it. So if you basically write something in the application which you might think that, I still get asked so many times, like one thing which I'm so tired of saying no to is people asking for my application that, can you please send us the written answers to your essays? And there's a reason why I do not share it. I'm not someone who's bad with sharing stuff, or who doesn't want to guide someone. I am more than happy to guide, like I am in this webinar. What are the things which should mention in the application, how you should basically perform in the interview. But what I'm thoroughly against is copying someone, because every experience is so individual and so unique. How are you going to stand out in the interview amongst thousands of candidates when you're just going to copy paste somebody else's experience? That's not going to be your story. If I can mention something about my interview, which is very personal, I did obviously answer the essays, and the STAR approach, which Waiza just mentioned, is excellent. That is spot on in the way you should basically write your application. But another thing in addition to it, which I would like to mention, is that if there is something in the application which probably you were hesitant in writing because you felt that it would not come across in the manner which you would like to perhaps better explain in person, then you should save it for that time. So it's not like you should put in anything and everything in the application because you feel, oh my God, I don't want to miss the opportunity of writing this one sentence, or, cram up those 500 words and writing 500 different things. And, the person reading the application is absolutely confused what's going on, that, you did this, you want to do this, you want to do that, or whatever. And the idea is, and I'm stressing it constantly, is to make the person who's listening to you convinced that you have a story to yourself, which just does not include, yes, like I mentioned, it's important that you talk about your practical work experience. Like you asked me that, Komal, tie up the arbitration experience in terms of the work experience that I did and the application itself, and how did I basically convince the people in the interviews for giving me the chance to get the Chevening Scholarship on the basis of my interest in arbitration and so on and so forth. Yes, that's a very strong component of the application. But the second component, which maybe, I would say is not really talked about, is your personal story. People taking the interviews are human beings, okay? And they are not robots. It's not like an online test going on where, a computer system is calculating a score on 1 is to 10 that, okay, fine, if you've met this requirement, then you're 9, or if otherwise you're 1 or whatever. Human beings tend to relate with information which is something which is personal. I had a story to tell the panelists, and I told them. That was not mentioned in the application at all, because at the time I felt that if I write this in the application, it can backfire me, because it might reflect that obviously I would not like to share what I mentioned, just because one is the risk of people copying my story, and the other is the risk that obviously I'm not comfortable in sharing it. But the idea was, the crux of their story was to tell them that how I really, really tried very hard to get the scholarship at the time when I was basically doing my LLB degree, because I wanted to be a barrister. And I basically, if I can perhaps, for those of them who are really curious to know, and with a disclaimer not to copy my story, is that I told them that, look, I really, really wanted to specialize and do something after my LLB degree. I got the admission in BPP Law School. For BPTC is the actual course. And I even booked accommodation for myself, and I paid the deposit and everything, but I did not have the funds. And that was something which was so individual, and I shared it with them to show how eager I am and how desperate I am to really get. I am dependent on it. It's not like I had an option that somebody would finance. I got the admission in LSE, right? I still remember when I got to know about the LSE offer, and I was in office at the time, and I ran to Munir Saab's room. Mr. Munir Malik, whom I've mentioned a lot during the entire webinar. And I said, Munir Saab, I got the LSE offer. And he was like, did you get the scholarship as well? And I said, no, not yet. But even getting the LSE offer is a big deal. It's not easy to get the offer for LLM. It's very competitive. So I was so excited. And I told the panelists that, I genuinely want to go to LSE. I have got the offer. I don't have a backup. I am only relying on this scholarship. So if I lose this chance, I lose it forever. There is no coming back to it. Yes, of course, people do apply for the Chevening application. So many people, in fact, who were with me in my batch, they said that, oh, Komal, wow, you qualified in the first round. In the first time that you applied for the Chevening application, we tried so many times. It was only the third time that we applied that we got in. So this is also something which I would like to mention, that if at all you do not qualify this year, then please do not be discouraged. Maybe there was a reason why you were not given the scholarship, or something which could then later on be rectified. Perhaps it was to do with your limited work experience, or maybe it was supposed to do with your recommendation. There can be so many reasons why you do not get the Chevening scholarship, but you should continue to apply, every year, whatever number of times you can possibly think that it is practical and pragmatic to apply again and again. That does not really limit your chances of getting the Chevening scholarship.
Well, wonderful insights, Komal. I see that we are coming to an end to the duration of the webinar that we had set. But before we do that, I'd like to come to Waiza. Waiza, any final words to the applicants that are applying this year? Something to especially law graduates and young lawyers who are really passionate about pursuing their career and enhancing their career through an LLM, and how prestigious this scholarship really is. And it doesn't just add value to the education, but also the entire professional side of a person, not just the academic side. So, any final comments on that? And then for the same final comments will come to Komal as well.
Thank you very much, Haseeb. So for the final comments, I think I would just want to suggest that keep yourself updated uh, with the uh, with the current year's Chevening policy and British government policies and everything which is relevant to your application and your scholarship journey. Uh, do your own research instead of just asking people about their essays, about their stories, about their experiences, because just as Komal has mentioned, it's not just that you can simply copy and paste. Besides copying and pasting, I believe that reading somebody else's essay or story basically limits your own vision and your own perspective to view life. If I would, for example, I have also been asked this question so many times, and I cannot share my essays because number one, there are a few personal sides to it. Secondly, even if I share my essays with anybody, I believe that it restricts the perspective of the person who's actually going to write his or her own story in his or her own manner, because सबका देखने का तरीका लाइफ को मुख्तलिफ होता है, सबका सिचुएशंस को टैकल करने का तरीका मुख्तलिफ होता है. If for example somebody reads my story and my circumstances and my situation, naturally human psychology है कि वो उसी को imitate करने की कोशिश करेंगे अगर वो उसको उठा के copy paste नहीं भी करते. So it's not just about copying and pasting. I believe it's about limiting your own canvas. That is why I believe it is, number one, not ethical to ask for somebody's essay. Secondly, it is not even appropriate for your own application. So इस पे तो I would specifically want to stress and request people who are applying for this year, or maybe who are considering to apply for Chevening in the upcoming years, to not ask for any scholar's essays. Yes, you can write your own essays, you can do your own research, you can ask for useful links, you can ask for useful material, and then maybe you can ask for assistance of some scholar to maybe review your essays, or to probably edit your essays, or to help you in giving a clear picture or a clear direction to your entire application. This could be something कि जिसमें आप assistance ले सकते हैं. But believe you me, अगर आप research नहीं कर सकते Chevening के लिए, और अगर आप उसके लिए जो available material है, जो guidelines available हैं, this plethora of plethora of literature जो अवेलेबल है इस वक्त इंटरनेट पे, यूट्यूब पे, फेसबुक पे, हर जगह पे, अगर आप उससे नहीं गो थ्रू कर सकते तो फिर आई थिंक इट्स नॉट योर गेम. आपको you have to do a certain hard work and you have to go through certain stages before you actually consider your application. वरना डिटेल्स डाल के सबमिट पे क्लिक कर देने से कुछ नहीं होगा. You have to do your homework and you have to put in real effort before you work on your application and you apply. तो एक तो ये चीज़ है कि आप real रहें, अपने तौर पे research करें, अपने तौर पे देखें. At least मैंने ये practice किया था, instead of just asking any person कि आप अपने essays दे दीजिए, आप अपना ये दे दीजिए, आप अपना वो दे दीजिए. तो ये एक चीज़ है जो कि we are very used to getting prepared stuff and just get things done in a manner, but for Chevening it's not gonna work. That's my advice. Secondly, be confident, be real, do not lie, do not say anything, do not mention anything that you have not actually done or achieved, do not even exaggerate stuff, be real. एक बहुत बड़ी जो मिथ है चीवनिंग के बारे में वो ये है कि चीवनिंग इज लुकिंग फॉर एस्टैब्लिश्ड लीडर्स. ये समझा जाता है कि अगर आपने कोई बहुत बड़ी सीईओ पोजीशन नहीं होल्ड की हुई, या आपने कम्युनिटी में कोई बहुत बड़ा इम्पैक्ट नहीं लेके आया, या आपने कोई बहुत बड़ा ऐसा काम नहीं किया कि जिसकी वजह से लोगों की जिंदगियां बदल गई हों, तो फिर यू आर नॉट eligible to apply for Chevening. But no, even if you have impacted one life by one small gesture and you think कि आप में वो एबिलिटी है, तो you're good enough to apply for chevening. It's not कि आपको कोई बहुत बड़ी बड़ी positions hold करने की जरूरत है या बहुत बड़े बड़े कोई आपने जिंदगी में काम किए हो तो only then you will be able to get it. No, it's just that how you communicate your story, how real you are, and how true you are to yourself and to your application. जैसे कोमल ने भी कहा कि कुछ भी, it's not only chevening application, even in life, whatever you do, if you're not sincere to it, then obviously it won't, reciprocate. तो ये चीज बहुत important है. So if you want to delve into the chevening process, and if you want to actually get it, फिर be sincere to it and put in all your energies, your time, your efforts and everything for chevening, and then I'm sure that you'll ace it. ऐसा हो ही नहीं सकता कि आप उसमें अपनी पूरी effort करें और फिर वो आपको ना मिले. I don't believe.
Well, very wise words, Waiza. Thank you. And coming to Komal, final remarks for those who seek to apply this year about the whole experience.
Thank you so much, Haseeb. Waiza has wonderfully summarized the final comments and has already covered a lot of important points. As far as the myths are concerned, one of the myths associated is that if you've already studied in UK, a lot of people discouraged me at the time when I was applying for the scholarship that, oh, Komal, if you were able to finance for 3 years your undergrad degree, then how can you not finance your master's degree for them? They wouldn't see the need to give you the scholarship because you've already experienced living in UK and you already went on self-finance, so why would they give you the scholarship? So I want to debunk this myth. First of all, it's not a need-based scholarship. They are not going to assess how much can you afford, how much money you have in your bank account. It's completely merit-based scholarship. So your financial means are out of the picture completely. Just because, in fact, I would like to think that it went in my favor, that I had already experienced living in UK. So if I was someone reviewing the application, I would rather give the scholarship to someone, but this is not saying that there is any sort of discrimination going on in the process. But obviously, if you've experienced living in UK already, if you've studied in their system, you will be much more comfortable going back to UK, studying for the 4th year, as opposed to somebody going for the first time. So please do not think that if you've studied in UK, or even if you hold a master's degree, this is another myth. So a lot of people who I studied in LSC and who were studying in different universities but were part of the Chevening batch, they're already done masters either from Pakistan or US or other countries, and then they got the scholarship again for masters. So simply because you've got a lot of diplomas already or master's degrees or studied abroad, that does not limit your chances to get the Chevening scholarship. And another point that I would like to make is that please be mindful of the little things which might sound trivial, but they actually make a difference. Reach on time for the interview. Have a pleasant expression on your face. Greet them well. If these are very basic things, but they dress appropriately and try to basically listen to them before jumping on answering whatever questions they've asked you. Reflect. If you are not able to immediately answer, then take some time, pause, and then think about it, and then answer those questions, rather than being in a rush to sort of like vomit your answers in the application and the interview and just be kind of like in a pressurized state that, oh my God, I have to say this, I have to say that, I have to convince them by pretty much, vomiting anything under the sun during the interview. You have to be careful and you have to prioritize the information which needs to be shared at the time of the interview. And one final last comment, that as much as we've talked about, very hardcore academic stuff, professional, and, doing something great for the country, all of that goes without saying. It's amazing. I mean, it's obviously something which is really the crux of the application, but please enjoy your time in UK as well, because I've already spent time in UK, so I also want to shed some light on how it was being in UK. I'll admit, when I went for LSE for the first time in 2010, as I said earlier, I did experience some sort of cultural shock. I was someone who would not really even step out of my house for shopping, let alone traveling to another country on my own. And so it was very difficult for me for two reasons. One, I was not used to living without my family. And I struggled in a lot of ways because I did not basically know where to get halal stuff from. But things have changed obviously from 2010 to 2020. It's a 10 years difference. Things have changed dramatically. It's now no longer difficult to get halal stuff, even if you're living in central London. And obviously, I was someone who I'm not generally very social person. So for me, at least when I'm here in Pakistan, I socialize by playing with my nephew or by meeting with my parents, watching drama. But Chevening Scholarship organizes a number of events. They are subsidized. So there are a lot of trips which are organized. Please do take advantage of those. Do not be a nerd. Yes, please focus on your studies. Try to make the most of your scholarship. I'm not saying that, just because you've got this scholarship, you can relax and, you can get away by not doing well and just getting a pass in your master's. That is surely not my intention, but try to balance things out, I would say. When it's giving you so many opportunities, it's organizing so many events, try to build interpersonal skills as well. Try to basically take advantage of developing as a person. I learned so much by sharing a room, which I didn't during my LLB. In masters, I was comfortable because I knew I don't have a lot of things to come as a surprise. The only surprise was who my roommate is going to be. And she, mashallah, she was Chinese, and I loved her company. Even now, we're in touch, even though China is terrible in terms of having social media platforms like Instagram and Facebook, but we sort of somehow break into it and then communicate with each other. So please do mingle with people. Try to make friends with people from all sorts of different countries, nationalities. Do not limit yourself only to your university. There are just so many options available. So make the most of your time in UK.
Well, thank you once again to both of you. Thank you, Waiza. Thank you, Komal, for being with us today and sharing your stories and choosing Digital Amicus to share your Chevening story, especially for people with a legal background, law students who are aspiring to apply for an LLM through the Chevening Scholarship. So thank you so very much once again. And we'll stay in touch for other webinars as well. Thank you for giving us your valuable time. So signing off with Digital Amicus. Allah Hafiz.